Chapter 6. Back to the past? Sam and Nick had bought some snacks from George at the counter and then gone to the back room where the Dungeons and Dragons table was. They sat down in one of the uncomfortable metal folding chairs and sat there, taking a few chips at a time while Sam unfolded her story carefully, as if it were an origami swan. So, she said tentatively, I'm Sam, but I'm not this Sam, she said, as Nick dumped some corn nuts into his mouth straight from the bag. So, what Sam are you? He asked between the crunches of corn nuts in his mouth, looking at her curiously. The Sam who was at camp with you when we were 12, she said, almost reluctantly. She wasn't sure if he would actually believe her, so she added, Oh, and I just finally read issue number 32. You asked me yesterday on the way to the bog if I had read it, and I shushed you because I didn't want anyone to know I liked comic books. But to answer your question, I hadn't read it yet, she explained. I just found it in the back issues and read it. That one was a doozy. Nick was looking at her completely confused. So she said, Supergirl? Before grabbing a chip and shoving it in her mouth as signal to herself to shut up and wait for his response. The look of dawning comprehension on his face melted into a wide-eyed look of wonder. His mouth did the same thing as her dad's had earlier. And he looked like a fish out of water or a mammal who couldn't quite understand what air was. He started and stopped a few times over the course of too many minutes, in Sam's opinion. Spit it out, she said bluntly between crunching on chips. I need to know if you believe me or not, she said, crossing her arms firmly in front of her, clearly ready for an argument. She honestly didn't know what else to say, but she figured if he needed proof, there had to be some way for her to provide it to him. So you, he started, and then put his fingers to his chin, are from 1999. He paused again before adding, when we went to camp? He brought his fingers up to pinch the bridge of his nose, right behind his glasses. That's what I'm telling you. Yes, she confirmed. His eyes were pinched shut and they were sitting in abject silence while he processed this information. Sam wanted to say more, but she honestly didn't know what would prove to him that she was her, but she wasn't really her. His eyes narrowed and he leaned forward and put his elbows on his knees, clutching his hands together as if he was the detective in an interrogation room. What shirt was I wearing to the bog yesterday? Without skipping a beat, Sam said, Your blue Pokemon t-shirt. He nodded in approbation. What did your dad eat for dinner last night? He didn't. He finished everyone else's meals, she explained. His hand made it back to his chin as he sat back in his chair thinking of a final question. What was the name of the counselor who brought us to the bog? He asked her. She felt butterflies in her stomach as she breathily said, Gary. And Nick continued nodding. He bent again, his hands clasped in front of him. What's your cell phone number? Sam's head cocked to the side and she said, What's his cell phone? He looked at her as if searching for her face for proof that she was messing with him. Give me your purse, he said. Sam grabbed the handles of her purse and handed it to him without hesitation. Oh my God, so you are really 12-year-old Sam from 1999, he whispered, eyes wide with shock. That's what I'm telling you, she replied, before a question came to mind. Wait, what convinced you? Sam would never just give me her purse, he said. She wouldn't give her purse to anyone, he laughed. Also, is your cell phone even in here? He asked, handing the purse back to her. I have no idea. What's a cell phone? She asked again, still confused. A mobile phone? He said, but tried to clarify, seeing the confused look on her face. A cellular phone. You mean those huge bricks you see on TV shows and stuff? She asked. He laughed and explained that cell phones were much smaller now. I don't know what kind you have right now, but I know you haven't gone anywhere without it for years now, he explained while she rummaged through her bag. She found a small pink brick in her purse and she handed it to Nick. He showed her how to power it on, and it sprung to life. He explained that she could make calls and send something called a text message. Sam was never so thankful that she was a fast learner, and she was soon able to at least navigate the basics of this new little piece of technology. All right. Author's note, another liberty I took with the history. I mention a pink phone, and I don't specifically mention which pink phone. I think at this point, like the Motorola Razr, like a pink version was probably out in 2004, so we could pretend it's that one. I had a specific phone in mind, and I just kind of threw it in because I loved the phone, but it did not come out until 2006. So the historian in me is like cringing because I'm like, girl, you gotta keep it correct, but I couldn't help myself. If anybody remembers, I think it was the LG strawberry chocolate phone. It was the slider. God, I loved that phone so much. And that was back when phones were still like relatively indestructible. Like you had to try to break phones back then. Now it's like my phone is currently in like a waterproof, shockproof, whatever, whatchamacallit, because I have like 3 phones with broken screens in my closet. But yeah, specifically it was the strawberry chocolate because I loved that. I loved it so much. And hilariously, when I was writing about the purse, I have a specific purse from when I was like around that age in mind that I believe I bought at Payless. And it was like a brighter, it wasn't blue, it was like teal. So it was a little more green than this, but it was like super bright sequins over the whole thing, shiny metal handle, and like fake leather. Like this thing was garish. I loved that purse so much. The 2000s, for any millennials who are watching, y'all know the 2000s was a wild time. We carried the weirdest things. We had the weirdest fashion sense. It was a strange time. Like I am both so happy and so thankful that we did not have social media back then. I'm also kind of sad, but also at some point I will be sharing because I do have all of my school IDs from freshman year up until the time that I briefly worked at Suffolk University. So I have every single school ID from like 14 until I was like 22, 23. I will be sharing those at some point because they are funny. Also, some of my hair choices are questionable at best. I think that was sophomore year. My sophomore year haircut is not great. Just not great. Was not a good look for me. Funny. I'll still share it because it's great. Would not do that again. All right, back to the story. So, do you have any theories about what the hell is going on? Sam asked him, putting the phone back in her purse. Well, usually when there's any sort of accidental time travel, it's about learning something, he explained, taking another mouthful of corn nuts. Have you learned anything yet? He asked her. Yeah, how to use a cell phone, she said, exasperated while rolling her eyes. He laughed and crumpled the finished bag. Okay, well, What do you have planned for today? He asked her. Sam looked at him, thought about it, and then realized that she had no idea what she was supposed to be doing today. She had jumped at the chance to come and ask for his advice, but she hadn't done a lot of investigation as to what her actual 17-year-old self was supposed to be doing today. I have no idea, she said, while continuing to absent mindedly eat some more chips. So you think this whole thing is happening to teach me something? She asked Nick. I mean, maybe it's just coincidence. Maybe you just tripped and fell through an accidental wormhole. Maybe you just happen to be a traveler and this is your mutant powers manifesting. Maybe there's a break in the space time continuum. I mean, I'm into this sort of thing, but I'm also just 17 here, he said. I may be able to figure out if the bus from Speed can make that bridge jump using physics, or calculate the Lancicrutonic speed needed for a fork to perfectly pierce a crouton, but time travel is well outside of my expertise at this moment, he said with a laugh. Lancicru what? She said, giggling, genuinely relieved that he hadn't changed at all since the last time she saw him. He was still the same delightfully nerdy dude she had always known. Just a really quick author's note. The bus from speed calculations and Lancicrutonic speed are actual things. They're based on my friend Jay, who unfortunately is no longer with us. But I wanted to include that, those little things, because they are some of the funniest things that I've ever experienced. He actually proved that, like, physically, like through physics, that like the bus from speed would not have made that jump, obviously. Willing suspension of disbelief when you watch movies, because that's like what I do other than narrating books and writing and whatever else I do, breaking up catfights. But he also came up with this thing called Lancicrutonic speed, and it was literally trying to figure out the exact speed and force you need to put on a fork to pierce a crunchy crouton but not break it on your fork. So this was a joke for like years and years. And I always, like, I'll be out to dinner with friends who have never met Jay in their lives, like in Morocco, abroad, like Boston, Western Mass. I'd be out and I'd like get a salad. Somebody would get a salad and be like, oh, Lancicrutonic speed. And they'd be like, what? And I'd have to explain. And then they'd be like, I'm like, yeah, I know. How are you out to dinner with me and you don't think that I'm gonna say something weird about something weird that somebody weird that I grew up with, because we're all weirdos. I don't think anybody in my social circle is like normal. I like the word normal. Boring. Weird. Anyways, I just wanted to point that out. All right, back to the story. She was even more thankful that he had chosen to trust her and had been so easily convinced that she was who she said she was. Mm. So, what do you think I can do to get back home? She asked him. A sudden serious look on her face as the giggles melted out of her and she realized just how homesick she was. He looked very earnestly at her and said, honestly, I'm not sure. We don't know what happened to put you here. We also don't know where. And he motioned to her with both hands. This Sam is. We don't know if it's a swap or if she's somehow displaced or whatever is happening. Without more information, there's no way of knowing how we can get you home. I'm assuming, he started to ask before Sam interrupted. Yes, I tried to Dorothy my way back. Of course I did. Wouldn't your first step be repeating there's no place like home just in case? She said, a look of derision on her face. He laughed. Somehow we always seem to be on the same page with the nerdy stuff, he said. And thank God for that, Sam said, and she meant it. She had never felt more thankful for the fact that she had this friend who was not only willing to trust her in this incredibly odd adventure, but was also able to help and show support. She hadn't realized how scared and helpless she had felt over the past few hours. She was in a body that wasn't actually hers, with a family that wasn't hers yet, in a world that she wasn't really ready for. The little pink brick in her bag chimed suddenly, and she pulled it out of her purse and saw a little envelope and the name Ben above it. It's that, she paused, trying to remember the terminology. Text message thingamabobble, she said to Nick. Who's it from? He asked while she was clicking the button to open it. She was too busy reading the message to reply, and the contents of the message shook her to her core. Somebody named Ben, she said, and she caught the subtlest twitch of Nick's face before she continued. I think we're supposed to be going to the beach today? He just texted me saying he'll pick me up at 4. She looked at Nick, expecting him to give her whatever information she was clearly lacking in this situation, but he looked hesitant, as if he didn't want to pop a giant bubble that was hanging between them. Nick? Sam looked at him seriously. Who's Ben? He sighed. Ben's your boyfriend. We've been going out for the past year or so, he explained. And? She said, pressing for more details. And? He doesn't like me. Well, he doesn't like any of your friends, he explained, looking frustrated and hurt. What do you mean? How can he not like any of my friends? You get along with everybody. How does Ben not get along with my best friend? She said, genuinely confused how she could be dating someone who didn't get along with one of her best friends in this world. Sam, we haven't really spoken outside of school in a few months. Frankly, you've stopped talking to a lot of people because Ben doesn't like it, he said, looking sadder and sadder the further into the sentence he got. Sam was confused. She would never just abandon her friends for some guy, would she? Yes, she had always wanted to fall in love and all that, but she wouldn't sacrifice her friends for the opportunity, right? Suddenly, she heard her dad holler from the front of the store that it was time to go. She felt heavier than she had when she had woken up in this body. Nick tried to hide the sadness in his face, and he smiled and said, well, you're here now. Maybe you can eventually talk some sense into yourself, he said with a half-sincere chuckle. They stood, and she pulled him into a hug, trying to physically reattach the clearly broken strings between them. You are my best friend, she whispered into his ear. And no Ben is going to change that. He wrapped his strong arms around her and whispered back, I really hope so, Sam. A more serious author's note. I definitely was one of those people who dated somebody in high school who hated all of my friends. And so I stopped hanging out with all of my friends. And I isolated myself from most, if not all, of my friends. I still talk to some people. I tried to keep it up, but it was really, really rough. And I want to add this author's note for anybody, anyone. It's one thing if you are in a relationship and somebody does not get along with somebody else. It's another thing if that person is making you feel guilty for spending time with people who are not that person. We'll get more into it in the next chapter of just how weird it got. But like, if you're in a situation where you find yourself relying on that one person entirely, please, please, please assess. I'm not saying like get rid, run, nothing. I'm not saying it because I do not know the situation. I am saying please assess it. Please talk to somebody, talk to a trusted person, and assess the situation. Because it took me, I'm going to say, over a decade to figure that one out because I was in that situation more than once. I'm a little slow sometimes. Very, very smart in a lot of ways. And in some ways, dumb as a bag of rocks. My pops used to say, the dumbest smart person he ever met. He's not wrong. I have my moments, for sure. But I'm including this, and like, I hate to put my character through this because honestly, I love Sam. And I mean, in the end, her life is going to be much less tumultuous than mine is. So like, I did not, this is not a true story by any means, shape, or form. It's loosely based because I think all authors pull from their own lives. I'm just being very honest, and adding these author's notes. This one specifically was a big one for me because I want to talk more about what it is to make yourself smaller for somebody, to limit your contact with people because of somebody else, because you don't want to upset them, because you don't want to make them mad. But if you ever feel like that, definitely assess the situation and try to figure out, is this good for you? There's no shame in putting yourself first for a minute there. As always, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate y'all coming out and showing up. Remember to like and subscribe. Please leave me a comment. If you're not comfortable leaving me a comment, send me a message. I'm always around. I don't have well, other than this project and the cat. Hi, Sage. Do you want to say hi? No? Okay. Send me a message. Leave me a comment. I'm on Insta and TikTok at Just Cats all the time, clearly. And Wattpad. All the links are in my bio. Next week is going to be chapter 7, The Beach. One of my particular favorites, I must say. Hi, Sage. Yes, buddy. He's my assistant for today, apparently. And by assistant, I mean the destroyer of my couch, which I am sitting on. As long as you don't get my toes, man. So please tune in. I should have that up on time on Saturday. So June 6th, The Beach is going to be up on YouTube. On Thursday is when it comes out on Wattpad. So if you want to read it ahead of time, it will be up on Thursday. Like, subscribe, follow, whatever. But thank you for being here. I appreciate you. Sage appreciates you. And we will see you next time. Bye, my little pumpkins.